Decoded.
Welcome back to Book Decoded, the show where we crack open insightful reads and turn them into actionable wisdom. Today,
Actionable, I like that.
yeah, right? So today we are diving into Through Shifts and Shocks by Steve Vamos. Now, this is a leader who's navigated massive changes over 40 years.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking everything from the rise of the PC to the age of AI.
I mean, he's seen it all.
And trust me, this book, it is packed with unexpected gems.
It really is. Vamos, he doesn't just focus on the tech itself, but how we adapt, lead, and even resist change. It's that human element where things get really interesting.
Exactly right. One of the first things that struck me was this idea that people, not technology, are the true drivers of change. Vamos argues that technology amplifies the potential of people.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, how often do we blame tech for disruptions when it's really about how we use it?
It's a brilliant point. Take AI or cloud computing, for example. They're tools.
Right.
Their impact comes from what we do with them, how we connect and collaborate, how we shape the future using these advancements.
Okay, so how do we actually make the most of these tools and thrive in this ever-changing world?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Vamos lays out 8 must-do actions for both personal growth and leading teams.
Right.
And we're going to unpack some of the most powerful ones.
Absolutely. And the best part is, these are applicable no matter your field or experience level.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that really struck me about the book, too.
Ready to dive in?
Let's do it. So Vamos starts by talking about mindset.
Okay.
One thing that really grabbed my attention was this idea of shifting from being a control freak to becoming more of a connector and enabler.
Oh,
He
interesting.
talks about embracing a learn-it-all attitude instead of clinging to a know-it-all mentality, especially in a world that's constantly changing.
That shift is crucial. Think about it. In fast-moving fields, what you knew yesterday might be obsolete tomorrow.
Yeah.
Vamos argues that this beginner's mind can be a real strength. When you're constantly learning and adapting, you're not as likely to be stuck in old ways of thinking.
It's so true. He even goes so far as to say that having less industry experience can be a secret weapon.
I love that.
And he uses this really cool example from his time leading Niams, the online media company, during the dot-com boom.
Okay.
He went from seasoned tech executive to CEO of a company in a field he knew very little about.
Wow.
You'd think that would be a disaster, but
it forced him to listen, learn, and rely on the expertise of others.
right.
By doing so, he created a more collaborative and innovative environment. He wasn't weighed down by assumptions or how things have always been done.
And that's what I call turning a potential weakness into a superpower.
Absolutely.
And this leads perfectly into another one of Vamos's must-dos that we wanted to dig into, creating psychological safety.
Ah, yes, psychological safety. That feeling that you can speak your mind without fear of judgment or negative consequences.
Right.
It's essential for creativity, risk-taking, and honest feedback. And it's something that companies like Google have actually measured the impact of on team performance with some pretty amazing results.
They found that teams with high psychological safety are not only more successful,
Yeah.
but also bring in more revenue and have lower turnover rates. That's a pretty compelling case for making it a priority.
It really is.
But okay, how do we actually build this kind of environment?
Right.
Vamos suggests things like openly admitting mistakes, actively soliciting feedback, and even encouraging healthy disagreements.
I love that.
Okay, I love the idea of encouraging disagreements, but how do we make sure those disagreements stay productive and don't turn into, full-blown arguments?
It's about setting clear expectations and establishing ground rules.
Right.
Vamos emphasizes the importance of focusing on the issue, not the person, and maintaining respect even when viewpoints clash. It's also about recognizing that conflict, when handled constructively, can lead to better solutions.
So it's more about having those crucial conversations and less about avoiding conflict altogether.
Exactly. And that takes us to another crucial must-do from the book. Making hard choices. Because, let's face it, leadership isn't always about making everyone happy.
This is where it gets really interesting because Vamos argues that hard choices are often between bad and badder,
Right.
and it's about selecting the option that best serves the long-term vision.
He uses a powerful example from his time at Apple, where Steve Jobs, known for his bold decisions, made the difficult choice to kill the Apple Newton handheld device. This impacted thousands of developers.
Oh, wow.
But his reasoning was clear.
Yeah.
We must focus on saving the Mac.
That's a tough call.
It is.
It reminds me of something Vamos said about how leaders sometimes need to make decisions that are right for the business, even if they're unpopular in the short term.
It's about having that long-term perspective and the courage to prioritize what truly matters. Sometimes it means letting go of things that were once successful,
Right.
but are no longer aligned with the future direction of the company.
Okay, so we've talked about mindset, psychological safety, and making hard choices. What other must-dos stood out to you?
Well, one that I found particularly intriguing was the idea of breathing with the business, which ties into Vamos's emphasis on mindfulness and self-awareness.
Interesting.
Now let's get into some of the, more practical tools and strategies.
Yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Exactly. And Vamos outlines these in through shifts and shocks.
I'm all about actionable advice, so what's first on the list?
Well, one that I found particularly intriguing, I guess, was this idea of breathing with the business. Which, I mean, it might sound a little out there at first, but... So, Vamos, he's a big believer in mindfulness and self-awareness.
Right.
And he argues that techniques like deep breathing can actually help leaders manage stress, stay calm under pressure, make more rational decisions.
Wait, so are we talking about like actual breathing exercises here? Like in the middle of like a board meeting?
Exactly. He actually shares a specific technique in the book.
Oh, wow.
Where you inhale slowly for a count of 4, hold your breath for 4, exhale for 4, and hold again for 4.
Okay.
He says this helps him, regulate his emotions, think more clearly, especially in those high-stakes situations.
Okay, that's wild. I've never thought about using like breathing techniques in a business context before.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of...
But I guess, it makes sense.
It does.
When you're stressed or overwhelmed, it's hard to think straight.
Right. And Vamos argues that, by intentionally slowing down your breathing, you create space for clearer thinking and more effective decision-making.
So it's like hitting the pause button on your stress response.
Exactly.
Okay, so deep breathing for better leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. What else is in Vamos's toolbox?
Another practical strategy that he highlights is something called level order planning.
Okay.
And this one's all about, bridging the gap between strategy and execution.
Okay, I'll admit the name sounds a little dry.
Yeah.
What's the gist?
So it's actually pretty simple.
Yeah, okay.
But incredibly powerful. It starts by clearly defining, your top strategic priorities. Then you break those priorities down into specific objectives.
Okay.
And finally, you outline the concrete actions needed to achieve those objectives. The key is that each level is clearly linked to the one above it, ensuring that everyone is working towards the same goals.
I like the sound of that. It's like creating a roadmap, but with very specific steps along the way.
Exactly. And Vamos uses this example of ALDI, the supermarket chain, you know them.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Known for their incredibly efficient operations. They use level order planning to ensure that every decision, from stocking shelves to pricing products, is aligned with their overall strategy.
That's so smart.
Yeah.
Okay, so how could, someone listening to this who maybe leads a smaller team or isn't running a whole company, how could they actually implement this level order planning?
It's definitely scalable. Let's say your team has a goal of increasing customer satisfaction.
Okay.
Using level order planning, you'd break that goal down into, specific objectives like improving response times or developing a new feedback system. Then you'd assign specific actions to each team member, making sure they understand how their individual contributions tie into the overall objective of improving customer satisfaction.
So it's like a cascading effect where everyone is working toward a shared goal, but with a clear understanding of their individual role in achieving it.
Precisely.
And when everyone knows what they're working towards and why,
Yeah.
it boosts morale, productivity, and accountability, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
This is really making me rethink how we plan and execute projects at my company. I can already see how this level order planning could streamline our processes and make sure everyone's on the same page.
I think you'll be impressed with the results.
Yeah, that's really cool.
But remember, it's not just about having a plan, it's also about making sure everyone is working together effectively.
Right.
Which brings us to Vamos's next must-do, alignment.
Okay, alignment. I'm guessing this is about breaking down silos and getting teams to collaborate.
You got it. Vamos talks about how these functional silos, where, different departments operate in isolation, can be disastrous for a company.
Yeah.
He suggests strategies like holding regular cross-functional meetings,
Okay.
creating shared goals, fostering a culture of collaboration.
It's so true. I've seen firsthand how siloed thinking can lead to miscommunication.
Oh, yeah.
Duplicated efforts, missed opportunities.
It's a mess.
It's a recipe for disaster.
And it's not just about departments, it's also about, like, aligning technology decisions with the overall business strategy. Too often, IT departments are seen as separate entities,
Right.
but their work should be directly supporting the company's goals.
Makes sense.
It does. So it's about getting everyone, regardless of their role,
Right.
to see how their work contributes to the bigger picture.
I see.
And he emphasizes the need for clear communication and feedback loops to ensure everyone understands the why behind the what.
Right. Right.
In fact, Vamos argues that if a company is having, like, consistent issues with its IT department or product development,
Okay.
it's usually a sign of a leadership problem, not a technology problem.
I like that.
It's about leadership setting the right tone and fostering a culture of alignment.
Okay, so we've covered mindset, psychological safety, making hard choices, level order planning, and alignment.
Yeah, we're making our way through the list.
That's a lot to unpack. Is there anything else we should touch on?
Yes. One more thing. The rhythm of the business.
Okay.
Vamos talks about the importance of establishing a regular cadence of meetings
Okay.
and communication to keep everyone on track.
Right.
And before you say anything, I know what you're thinking.
Oh, no, not more meetings.
Exactly. But Vamos makes, like, a really interesting point here.
Okay.
He says that until a team or organization is performing well and everyone is clear and aligned,
Yeah.
you actually need more meetings, not fewer.
More meetings. I'm not sure I'm buying that. Can you elaborate?
It's about, creating those opportunities for regular check-ins, feedback, and course correction.
Okay.
He suggests, like, monthly meetings to discuss strategic priorities, actions, and performance against objectives. But here's the key. These meetings need to be productive and focused on the right things.
So it's not about just scheduling more meetings for the sake of it. It's about using those meetings strategically to, keep everyone aligned, moving in the right direction.
Precisely. And he also emphasizes the importance of face-to-face interaction, especially for, like, globally distributed teams.
Right.
While video calls are convenient, they can't fully replace the value of spending time together in person.
Yeah, I can definitely see how those in-person interactions can be crucial for building relationships, fostering trust, and having those more nuanced conversations that you just can't always have over, like, a video chat or something.
Exactly. And this ties back to something we talked about earlier, amplifying the human element in a world that's becoming increasingly digital.
Right.
It's about finding that balance between leveraging technology and nurturing those vital human connections.
This is all making so much sense. Vamos is really challenging my assumptions about leadership and giving me some practical tools to put into action. But how do we actually measure our progress? Like, how do we know if we're on the right track?
Right. That's where I think the right scorecard comes in. Vamos talks about the importance of measuring what truly matters, not just focusing on the bottom line.
Okay.
He encourages using, like, both hard metrics like revenue and profit alongside, softer metrics like customer satisfaction, employee engagement.
It's like getting a holistic view of performance, right?
Exactly.
Not just focusing on the numbers, but also considering, the human impact.
Yeah. He's a big fan of the Net Promoter Score, NPS, which measures customer loyalty and advocacy. It's a simple but effective way to gauge how your customers feel about your company and your products or services.
And Vamos stresses the importance of transparency and accountability when it comes to these metrics.
Right.
Like, everyone should have access to the data and understand how their work is being measured.
Absolutely. That creates, a culture of ownership and continuous improvement. When people can see how their individual efforts contribute to the overall success of the team and the company,
Yeah.
they're more likely to be engaged and motivated.
It's all about connecting the dots and showing people, like, the impact of their work, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of impact, one thing that really impressed me about Through Shifts and Shocks is that Vamos doesn't just preach these principles.
Right.
He lives them. The book is full of stories about his own experiences leading through major changes at companies like Apple, Microsoft, Xero.
What's inspiring is that he's very open about his own mistakes and lessons learned. He shares moments where he got things wrong.
When he had to navigate a sensitive social media controversy at Xero, it makes him relatable and shows that even successful leaders are constantly learning and evolving.
It humanizes him, right? It shows that it's okay to make mistakes as long as we, learn from them and keep moving forward.
Absolutely.
And, he shares some great anecdotes about observing other legendary leaders like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates.
He even talks about getting some tough but valuable feedback from Kerry Packer, the Australian media mogul.
Really?
Apparently, Packer wasn't too impressed when Vamos tried to sugarcoat the impact of online media on traditional businesses.
Ouch. I bet that was a memorable conversation.
Yeah.
But it highlights a key point that Vamos makes throughout the book.
Yeah.
Honesty and directness are crucial for building trust and driving progress, even when it's uncomfortable.
He's a big believer in, like, facing reality head on.
Right.
Having those tough conversations,
Yeah.
making the hard choices that will ultimately lead to the best outcome.
And remember, it all comes back to psychological safety.
Right.
When people feel safe to speak their minds and share their perspectives, you're more likely to get that honest feedback that can lead to better decisions.
That's like cycle, right?
Yeah.
Psychological safety enables honest feedback, which allows for better decision-making, which ultimately leads to better outcomes.
Exactly. And Vamos provides some very specific tools and techniques for, fostering these positive cycles within teams and organizations. He talks about the importance of humility, self-awareness, and continuous learning,
Right.
especially for leaders.
He even suggests things like feedback speed dating,
Love that.
where team members pair up and give each other rapid-fire feedback on their strengths and areas for improvement.
It's a brilliant way to break down barriers, encourage open communication, and create a culture of continuous feedback.
Right.
And remember, feedback isn't just about criticism. It's also about recognizing and celebrating successes.
Absolutely. So if our listeners were to take away just one key message through Shifts and Shocks, what would you say it is?
I think for me, it's the idea that change is inevitable. And the most successful individuals and organizations are those that embrace it with a learn-it-all mindset.
Right.
A focus on alignment and a commitment to continuous improvement. Vamos calls it being change-friendly.
I love that term, change-friendly. It's about seeing change not as a threat, but as an opportunity for growth,
Right.
innovation, and even fulfillment.
Exactly. It's about having the courage to, step outside of our comfort zones,
Yeah.
challenge our assumptions,
Right.
and embrace the unknown.
And Vamos gives us a practical roadmap for becoming more change-friendly in both our personal and professional lives.
So to our listeners, I encourage you to, pick up a copy through Shifts and Shocks. You might be surprised by how relevant and applicable these lessons are,
Right.
regardless of your field or experience level.
And remember, change can be daunting, but it's also an opportunity for growth, innovation, and even fulfillment.
Absolutely.
As Vamos reminds us, it's not the technology itself that's disrupting our world, but how we choose to respond to it. So go out there, embrace the change, and make something amazing happen.
That's it for this episode of Book Decoded. Thanks for joining us.